What's up, everybody? Welcome to PneuPneuma Godcast. I'm your host, Norman Brown, aka The Professor. Today, I want to get into the subject of fatherlessness, and I want to say that this was birthed out of something that I heard recently. I was at church, and we had a guest, I guess you could say, organization, so to speak, of young people who came to represent a portion of YWAM, but it's specifically associated with something called circuit riders, and their name as a collective group is called Black Voices. And one of the ladies, the young ladies, her name is Anna. She was ministering, and she was talking about Moses, and she pointed out something that I never thought about before until this particular time. And I was like, wow, I never thought about the fact that Moses had a situation where it seemed like he was fatherless. His father wasn't around at all. So we would assume that his father died. We never hear a mention of Moses' father. But later on in his life, we do see him connect with Jethro, who became his father-in-law. And he started to tend the sheep of Jethro after he married his daughter, Zipporah. Now, this is very interesting because it brings a whole new light to certain things about Moses that we saw, that we witnessed, but it now gives a clearer perspective as to why those things were happening. And I say that because Moses was in a situation where he was not raised around his family. I mean, it's clear that he knew who his sister and brother were when he grew up, because when he was an adult and he came back to Egypt, he went straight to them after he was around, his people, trying to get them out of slavery. But the other thing was the fact that when he came back to deliver his people from slavery, his brother Aaron was literally saying, he was going to be part of the whole situation as far as, being able to approach Pharaoh and being able to represent his people. So he went to Aaron, and Aaron joined forces with him to go speak to Pharaoh. So obviously, like I said, that means that he knew who his brother and sister were, even though he wasn't able to grow up with them per se. Now, we know that Moses was in a situation where he was with a woman that wasn't his mother as he was growing up. She took Moses in and decided to basically be his mother growing up. And that meant that Pharaoh ended up being his grandfather, or was treating him like a grandson. So here we have a situation where it's like an adoption, essentially an adoption. And the one thing to notice about how Moses did certain things, he felt like he had a need to defend his people. And that came out as there was a situation between two brothers or two Hebrews that were fighting one another, and he came to jump in the middle of it. But that was the second day. The day before, he had actually seen an Egyptian beating on a Hebrew, and he rose up and murdered that Egyptian. So we see a type of righteous indignation that was directed in the wrong type of action. He was responding to something that God put in him, which was to defend his people, but he went about it the wrong way. I wonder what would have happened had Moses grown up seeing that his father was a Levite, what would have happened if he had grown up under the tutelage, the mentorship, and things like that of his father in the natural? What would have been different about his reaction to that situation? Now, we can't necessarily say for sure, but what I will say is this. In America, it has already been proven that a lot of the children that come out of single parent homes, specifically a single mother, they are more prone to criminal activity, to getting into trouble, to getting into, teenage pregnancy, stuff like that. There's statistics that back this. I'm not here to bring all the statistics out. One thing about me when I do this channel, when I'm doing these live shows, I'm just coming off the top with the knowledge that I already have. Sometimes I'll know stats, sometimes I don't, but I'm just giving you raw, real information coming from the knowledge that I have from studying the word and also from just being aware of what's going on in society. So anyway, so this is what I'm saying. What would have changed? What would have been different had his father been in his life? Would he have been different? Would he have responded to that situation differently? I don't know. I can only surmise and say, well, it's a possibility. Maybe he would have done something differently. I don't know. But here's the thing. You look at situations in the Bible where there are guys who were fatherless, and you see the various types of things that they did. And then there were guys that had their fathers but did not have their father's love. Or there were people who had fathers, but their fathers were not really, they were inept, I'll say it like that. So one other example that I want to point out right now is David. Here was David, who grew up with his brothers, grew up with his father and his mother, and yet we see where his father chose to make a decision to belittle him or to disregard him. I mean, one of the things that I've learned out of looking at scriptures and looking at other people's lives is that the way that we deal with our children and how we, let's say, pit one against another or something like that, it will affect them. It will affect how they feel about themselves, how they feel about their siblings, and how they feel about their parents. That's why we have to always be careful about how we deal with our children. We have to be careful about how we talk to them, how we mention things. You never want to pit another child against another child. Meaning, I don't want to ever say, and I would never say, oh, I love this child more than that one. Or I'd rather be around that child than this one. Oh, that's my favorite right there. Never. First of all, because every child that I have has certain qualities about themselves that I love, that stands out from the other children. There's nothing that I would have to say. There's nothing that I could say that I would be like, oh yeah, I like this child more than that one because, they look better than that one or something like that. No, I would never do that. Every one of my children they have unique qualities, unique things about them that cause me to like them, that cause me to enjoy their company and enjoy being around them and things like that. So that alone is a reason why I would not ever say anything like that. But on top of that, I just know what it does to a child's psychology to hear a parent say, I love this child more than I love that one, or that's my favorite child, that's my favorite son, that's my favorite daughter. That's almost like destroying their self-esteem when you say something like that. Imagine how that makes other children feel. I've even seen this in the workplace where you find that certain co-workers are doing better than others, but the managers keep pointing it out for everybody to hear or see, and then it starts to cause resentment in the other co-workers. I've seen it very clearly with groups of people that I've been around. When the co-workers heard certain things that was said by the managers about their co-workers, their peers, certain peers among them, that they had a certain mindset about it, that it caused certain type of resentment, and then it caused conflict, because eventually the person who was not acknowledged is now trying to sabotage or make the other people look bad every chance they can. So I've even seen it with myself, been on a job and doing my job, trying to do the best I can. I'm not looking for accolades or anything like that. But then there are moments where, you know, certain people who have already felt like they've been marginalized or whatever the case may be on the job, they then find a reason to be mad at me because they know that I'm doing something, that I'm trying to make a difference, that I am making a difference. And it then leaves them in a light that's not good. So they get mad at me because of that. Now, I can't help it that, you know, people have that kind of mindset. That's not on me, that's on them. But the fact of the matter is it exists. And so getting back to the point is that, you know, when you look at David and how he was raised, there came a point in time when Samuel came looking around for the next king of Israel, who was going to be the king. And he looked at everybody who was presented to him by Jesse, the father of all these boys, and he thought he knew when he saw them. He thought he knew that he found them. And here's a good thing to see in that moment. One good thing to see out of this is that, on a side note, prophets, just because they're prophets doesn't mean they are always walking in spirit. Or what I mean by that is they're not always seeing into the spirit realm exactly what God is seeing and whatnot, and making decisions out of what that is. Sometimes they're saying something based on their own natural mindset, which you can just call, you know, human nature. You know, human nature would say, if you're the tall, you know, strong, you know, alpha male, then you're the one that's the leader. But sometimes it's not the strong, you know, tall one. It could be the short, strong one. I mean, you never know. And the point I'm making is that, and God is really good at this too. He loves to choose the one that was counted out. He loves to choose the one that was ignored or that was considered to be less than or whatever. He loves to raise them up and make them more than what anybody thought they would be. But that's exactly what happened with David. David was out there tending to the sheep, and then next thing you know, they're coming to get him, and, you know, he's the one. But what's the point I'm trying to get to, though? The point is that you see the difference between, you can see that with or without a father, there are certain struggles that a person will have. But in this case, we're also saying that even with the father, if that father does not have the right mindset, it still will affect that child negatively. So a father that has a negative mindset versus a father who's just not there can have the same effect on a child, possibly. That, you know, the one that's saying, you know, that's my favorite or whatever the case may be, that can cause dissension among the other children. One more example from the Bible that we see is Israel, who was once called Jacob. He made a decision to point out that Joseph was his favorite. gave him a coat of many colors and all this kind of stuff. He was doing things for him that he wasn't doing for the other sons. And it was obvious to the other sons how he was being treated and what was the difference. So with that being said, they had their resentment built up to the point where they sold him into slavery. They sold Joseph into slavery. That again shows us why a father, even in the life of his children, if he's not coming from the proper perspective, or if he's not looking at things with the proper perspective, proper lens, or if he hasn't learned from past mistakes of other fathers, then they can make a mistake in the way that they deal with their children and cause them still to be harmed, so to speak, in their conscience, their self-esteem, their heart, their mindset. So the thing that I would say though is we did see for at least 2 decades, maybe almost 3, that there was a really big issue of fatherlessness in America. And I'm going to say it could have been as much as 4 decades, because I remember when I was a child, and I'm talking about even probably pre-teen days, hearing about kids without their fathers around. So that being the case, you know, I'm 50 now, so that being the case, I can imagine that that would have been a big deal, you know, even back then. So for the last 40 years almost, we've been seeing this problem. But however, I believe that I've been seeing a change and a reversal in that over the last 5 years. So maybe we can say that for maybe 3 decades, it was a strong problem. But then over the last maybe 10 years, I've been seeing a reversal of that, where slowly but surely there's becoming more and more of a conscientiousness of men to be in the lives of their children. And these are not all men who are saying this based on some biblical stuff. These are men who just realizing that, number one, it's important for them to be in the life of their children. Number 2, they want to be in the life of their children. And number 3, they're seeing the impact of them being in the life of their children. There are things that I could point out about my personal situation. I'm not going to talk about that right now specifically, but I will say that I have seen, even in my own life, with my presence in the life of my children, I can see the impact that it's had on their lives. All of my children have been impacted positively because I'm in their life. That's something that, when a father has the right type of approach to fathering his children, and they have the knowledge of certain things that will help their children to grow and mature and to develop and things like that, they have the proper tools, that becomes a very effective and powerful situation for those kids. So I just want to say, you know, that over these last 5 to 10 years, I've definitely seen a turnaround in the rise of homes with fathers being present in the lives of their children and things like that. And I see also the positive effects of that, of them being in the life of their children. And I know that if that continues, as long as that continues, then it's just going to get better. Things are just going to get better in that situation. And so one of the things that I just want to say right now is that we need to continue to pray that God will raise up these fathers, whether they be spiritual or natural, because sitting down with these young people among black voices, even with them, it was like they were talking about how they just really need to have fathers in their life. And they recognize that. And God has been raising up fathers, and will continue to do that. And I really believe that in this season, over the next, several decades or whatever, maybe just over the next decade or so, that we're going to see fathers really become a major part of kids' lives, that it's going to become the norm to see fathers with their children, whereas in the past, it was always the mothers with the children. I think we're going to see a reversal in that. Prophetically, I'm declaring it and decreeing right now. So, Father, I thank you now that you are touching the hearts of men and you touching the hearts of children. You said in your word in Malachi that when the hearts of the fathers turn to the hearts of the children and the hearts of the children to the hearts of the father, it says, unless that happens, rather, that you will smite the earth with a curse. Really, it was saying that a curse would come upon the earth, because without fathers, you have made it clear that without fathers in the lives of their children, curses come upon the earth. We have seen it over the last 3 decades, and now we're starting to see a reversal of that role in the lives of the kids. And Father, I decree and declare that it will continue and that it will grow, that more fathers will wake up and realize the power that they have in the life of their children. And Father God, I thank you that you're going to wake up a generation to be able to accept the call as a father in the life of their natural kids and or spiritual kids. In the name of Jesus, pray and I thank you. Amen. Well, thank you again for listening to PneuPneuma Godcast. I really appreciate all of you. Make sure you like and subscribe. Like the video below and subscribe to the channel so that you can get all the notifications. Hit the bell so you get all the notifications. Once again, thank you for listening to PneuPneuma Godcast. Peace.